the definition of stupidity is doing the same thing over again and expecting a different answer. So I would argue that by definition, automation is stupid. Though it's not valuable, automation can be incredibly valuable. But for me, the true paradigm of AI are systems that can safely adapt themselves in production.
Welcome to Data and AI Mastery, the podcast where we bring you cutting-edge insights, practical advice, and inspiring stories from the leaders shaping the future of data and AI across the globe. I'm your host, Raoul-Gabriel Urma, founder of Cambridge Spark, the leader in transformational data and AI upskilling, career development, and progression. In each episode, I will be diving into real-world case studies of companies harnessing the power of AI to drive innovation, reduce costs, and create new business opportunities. So whether you're an aspiring data scientist, AI engineer, or seasoned executive, this show is designed to give you the tools and knowledge to stay ahead in a world where data is transforming every aspect of business. Stay ahead, stay inspired, stay masterful. Welcome to Data and AI Mastery. Hi Daniel, great to see you. How are you doing today?
Likewise, yeah, really good. Busy week so far, but all good busy.
Yeah, no doubt. In the world of AI, every week must be really busy as it stands.
It is, yeah. It's relentless at the moment, but again, it's all going in the right direction.
So if I take you to the role of Chief AI Officer, it's a fairly newish role, right? Like we're kind of here coming up. Can you tell us a bit what does it involve essentially on the day-to-day and for WPP? Like what is it all about?
Marketing is being completely disrupted by AI because, you know, in a world where you can now create ads in seconds and test those ads against synthetic audiences as opposed to months, then it completely changes our business model. So my day job is understanding how to apply AI to solving and differentiating WPP's marketing platform, which we call WP Open. So I lean into problems like how we use AI to do dynamic segmentation or audience perception, content creation, channel optimization. So lots of different flavors of algorithms that I really enjoy thinking about and applying. Actually, WP also have a workforce of over 100,000 people. So how AI is going to be used to enhance, accelerate creativity and change that workforce. We still get to also build AI solutions and innovations for things outside marketing as well, which is also very exciting and keeps us close to other industries. And as part of that role, I also am tasked with thinking about the kind of responsible, safe, and ethical use of these technologies, not even just in this industry, but in other industries as well. So it's been a fantastic acquisition. They give me a huge amount of rope and resources to experiment with cool things.
We talk about AI, and I was watching your TEDx talk from 4 years ago, which is absolutely amazing. So I recommend everyone to watch it. And in that talk, you are describing, what is AI, and I think there's two definitions. And one definition, you say, well, there's a narrow definition. People talk about AI being like human-like capabilities, but maybe a bit too narrow. Whereas the second definition is more goal-oriented. You set a goal. AI can get there and learn by doing and learn through mistake. Can you elaborate a little bit more, 4 years later, in the world we live in today, has that definition evolved, your sentiment evolved, and how do you see it, I guess in the world of business?
Yeah, I think, unfortunately that, there are many definitions of AI knocking around. The most popular definition is I think the weakest definition. And actually that's been popularized because of generative AI. So the most popular definition is getting computers to do things that humans can do. And now we've got, AIs or generative AI creating corresponding natural language and, recognizing objects and images. And when we get machines to behave like humans, because humans are the most intelligent thing we know in the universe, we attribute that to be intelligent. Now, there's enough books and information out there to show you that actually humans are not that intelligent in certain ways. We can find patterns in about 4 dimensions. We can solve problems up to 7. Computers can find patterns in thousands of dimensions, and they can solve problems with thousands of moving parts. So there's actually a much better definition of AI that I subscribe to. It's from the 80s, which is this goal-directed adaptive behavior. So it's essentially systems that are able to make decisions, learn about whether those decisions are good or bad, adapt themselves so next time they make better decisions. And And if I'm honest, most systems still in production are automation. They make decisions, but they don't learn from them. The definition of stupidity is doing the same thing over again and expecting a different answer. So I would argue that by definition, automation is stupid. Not that it's not valuable. Automation can be incredibly valuable. But for me, the true paradigm of AI are systems that can safely adapt themselves in production. And that's very hard to build, by the way. And so actually, whilst I aspire to building systems that do that fit that goal-directed adaptive definition. Over the past several years, I've been looking at AI not through definitions, not through technologies, but I've been developing frameworks to help organizations understand what frictions they have, and then how do they apply the right technologies to solving those frictions. So come at it much more from an application perspective and from a definition perspective.
That's fantastic. So, we've got this definition of intelligence and we can argue about it, and there's the field of reinforcement learning, there's the field of machine learning, but it sounds like at the end of the day, in the business world, let's start with the problem, let's start with the friction point, and then there might be like simple solution that leverage automation without all the adaptability.
Yeah,
So
I know it sounds obvious, but the reality is that industry would get very excited about emerging technologies. 8 years ago, 9 years ago, it was data science, so people would hire machine learning experts. They'd hope that by extracting insights from data, that it would lead to better decisions, and for the most part, it doesn't. Now it's obviously generative AI, but and we then try and apply those emerging technologies to solving the wrong problems. We blame the technology. We say there's hype, but the reality is that humans really are not very good at understanding what the right algorithms are at solving the right problem. And I think that's what's Italia, and that's what we're really good at.
Why do you think the industry gets it wrong in that case? Like, why do we get so excited about emerging technology and we forget about solving problems?
Well, if I was being controversial, which I will be, people like to build careers around emerging technologies, and they'll convince themselves and convince their stakeholders that by giving them some funding and building a data science team, or building a generative AI team, that they're going to be able to then drive value, and because they want to kind of build a career around these exciting new emerging technologies. And the reality is that for the most part, most organizations can't attract and retain the talent to build differentiated solutions. That's really one blocker. The second blocker is, if you've never built and scaled software inside your organization, then you're not going to do the same thing for AI. It's going to be very hard for you to build and scale and innovate that software. So I try to encourage people to focus on applying these technologies to solving problems in their supply chain that will differentiate their business. Core productivity will be solved in the future. Don't worry about building agents to do expenses and things like that. Just focus on applying these technologies that differentiate your business. But the fact is, people tend to get excited about this and build careers around these emerging technologies.
I love a bit of controversy, Daniel. So that's great to go there. And it sounds like fundamentally we have to go back to strategy, your value proposition, what's different about your business, and kind of double down on what's your differentiator. That's kind of like, do you believe that means like leaders should kind of like maybe go back to strategic books and business and then figure tech afterwards?
Yeah, in fact, I actually argue, you have to go several steps beyond that. You then have to figure out how do I have the ability to actually execute on that strategy? Do I have the data? Do I have the talent? Do I have the investment, the stakeholder buy-in to be able to make sure that we can drive those solutions? So execution, tends to be the main blocker for these types of things. But I also would suggest that people don't just assume that this is the smartest AI will be. Today is the dumbest AI will be, and it's just going to get smarter. So make sure that you're developing solutions that skate to where the puck is going rather than where the puck currently is. And my prediction is that whilst a few years ago large language models were a little bit like intoxicated graduates, 50% of what they came out with was nonsense, and we're seeing that now graduating to like a master's level where they can do rudimentary reasoning. I think the fact is that over the coming years they're going to go from master's level to PhD level, to postdoc level, where they can actually do science, to eventually, I predict that by the end of this decade, we'll have a professor in our pocket, something that we can actually ask questions that we've never asked, and then use the scientific method to go and solve it. And I think that's really where companies need to be building towards, rather than where it is now.
Yeah, so that's a great insight. So you've mentioned, the need for strategy, execution, and arguably people, also culture, like being able to adapt and embrace all this new change. But so what guidance do you have for, leading this space? Because we agree that technology is moving so fast. Today is the dumbest AI you'll use. Yet you have to work on operational efficiency, on increasing your customer delight. So you kind of have to do something today, like right now. So how do you balance out this dilemma between, if I wait a little bit, it's just going to get better, so I could jump on that. But if I wait, I'm not really doing anything and my competition will get ahead. So what's the trick here? What's the recommendation?
So I think the trick is possible, educating yourself to make sure that you're not being seduced by the hype, or, consultants that are just spouting rhetoric 101. And the second is, I know this is going to sound obvious, and I think you've already said this, which is you sit down and you list all of the frictions that you have in your business. Frictions from your front office, your supply chain, to back office frictions, to workforce frictions. And then you then list those frictions and prioritize them according to some simple business case. It doesn't have to be a complicated business case. And then start knocking them off one by one, either, buying solutions that solve that friction, or building solutions. And then making sure that you're stitching this infrastructure together so that you have, an AI, reusable AI architecture. Don't start with building a data lake and putting Tableau on top and thinking that's going to drive value in your business. Make sure that you're addressing frictions, and that's driving value. And then it's an incremental process. But we've done this with companies over the past, almost 2 decades, and ultimately they end up driving value, but then having an infrastructure that is scalable.
That's great. So perhaps a bit more of an entrepreneurial sort of approach, lower hanging fruits, 20-80 rule, get started. And then as you get some wins, then you kind of like build the abstractions and the modularity around your initial work, right? That's kind of like the recommendation to get going. So don't wait, but like start and approach it as a learning journey. Okay, that's cool. So if we talk about frictions and then making that whole list of friction, what's a recent sort of AI project you've been involved where, you've identified, your team identified, like, here's a friction, we think we can solve it, with AI, and what did you get out of it? It'd be great to get like an example to life.
I mean, if we look at marketing, I think whilst there are many frictions across the kind of marketing supply chain, there are 7 really core problems. One actually is creativity, how you can get AI to come up with ideas in divergent, creative ways. And one of the things that we've been doing in WPP is we've been training these AIs on the kind of expertise, the genius of our creatives. And when we back test those AIs against briefs, they've been able to come up with things that would have won Cannes Lions. So we can get AI to be creative. That said, I believe they will totally enhance human creativity. So it'll enable humans to elevate their creativity. So that was one friction, is how do you come up with more ideas faster, better? Content creation obviously is something that we do a lot, but creating brand specific production grade content is extremely hard. If you go and ask any any model right now to go and create a brand perfect ad, and it's not going to be able to. Even if you upload your brand guidelines, your tone of voice, your written copy, imagery, it's still not going to be perfect. And so we've got a whole team of people that are trying to get to the point where AI is coming up with brand specific content. That's one friction. Another friction, which I think is really powerful, and this applies to every company, is you can build synthetic audiences of who you're selling to, and you can then test content, whether they be sales materials, promotion materials, whatever, against those synthetic audiences to see how they think and feel about things. So generative AI has unlocked frictions that certainly across the marketing supply chain that now allow us to solve end-to-end marketing, which wasn't possible before.
Okay, that's fantastic. So there's a notion of, the AI can support a creativity process, or even, augment it and replace it to the same level. You might argue, right? It sounds like you had some sort of benchmark to identify whether the AI solution is as good as maybe a team. What about speed? Because that tends to be an underrated like value. I imagine in the space of marketing, speed to creation, is that like a factor? Like you react some events and need to create stuff. Would that be
Yeah, I
like
mean,
a benefit?
again, historically, that wouldn't have been possible because it would have been taken too long to come up with the ideas to be able
Yeah.
to produce the content and push it out there. By that point, that moment has been missed. And if I'd actually one of those frictions is the identification of macro and micro moments that are going on around the world right now, where you could be building relevant campaigns to address that. I'd argue that there are millions of moments today that are being missed where brands are failing to put their content in from the right people at the right time. And actually, I actually think that it's very exciting being in this industry, because I think we're actually going to see way more marketing, but much more relevant marketing and much more interesting marketing. And when I say interesting, is about, if I asked you what your favorite ads were, they weren't personalized ads. They were probably, an ad that had a shared cultural moment that connected people, and that sort of hit higher than, or your values higher than just faster, better, cheaper, but they made you feel nostalgic or connected, or even make you feel like you're making the world better. So I think what's really exciting over the coming years is that we'll be able to come up with these really crazy ideas that will connect you to brands in a much more quickly and an effective way.
So if I played back, so make the list of sort of frictions, and then context of marketing, clearly creatives, great place to look at, speed, plus the personalization. So this is all the good stuff. Can you tell us a bit about the challenges? Like again, we can be sold on like there's so much value we can get, it's going to be great, but what does it take to make that happen in practice? I'm thinking about, you mentioned software, system, data, like is it easy, is it
Yeah,
hard, what does it take?
no, I mean, like any kind of transformation, digital transformation, you have to take people on a journey, and that's probably the biggest blocker is going through that change management, and marketing is going through complete change, because historically you would sell time and materials, you would sell your creativity hours. Now what we're having to do is sell and license enterprise AI software, which is a very different conversation with clients than just selling time and materials.
So the
So
business model itself is changing.
oh yeah, that's how, the revenue model of the entire industry is changing. And also going back to the point that, people want to build a career for themselves. So, a lot of brands are then say, well, we can build our own marketing tools. Now, we've got generative AI. And again, the reality is that they will build tools. They won't be sustainable. They won't be differentiated. And, in 3 years' time, they'll have to go back, hopefully, to a WPP to license our marketing software, because it's smarter. It's got all of the data. We've got teams of people that are pushing the boundaries in terms of, utilizing these models. So I think, the same barriers exist for any emerging technology. It's just people placing the wrong bets, and the change management required.
Interesting. At the end of the day, boils down to people getting on the journey, change management together. So if we were to take that out, and like where's the defensibility in terms of, you kind of like mentioned there's players in the market. How do you create defensibility in market like that, whereby AI in a way is making things a lot more accessible? Like even there's a bunch of stories now that you no longer need a team of like 30 developers to kind of get an app out there. You can like just go vibe code, then maybe kind of like tweak it a little bit. So where do you see the defensibility? Is it the proprietary data set, the expertise acquired over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Defensibility will be in how you train and pipeline these different technologies. So again, if you wanted to create brand specific content, doing that is very hard. And we've got an entire team of people that are trying to figure out how to solve that problem. That said, it's going to become easier and easier to create more branded specific content, but audience perception, I think, is a differentiator. So if you've got data that helps you understand how people perceive things, I think that's more useful than your competitors, then you have an advantage. And WPP have just launched Open Intelligence, which is essentially a human behavioral model that helps us understand how people think and feel about things. So that data, I think, is important. Purchasing data, knowing what's successful, what's not. That's not available to everybody on the internet. So if you understand and can predict performance, clicks, likes, sales, comments, because you have access to that data, and then are able to understand why this is leading to clicks, likes, and sales, then again, that is a differentiator as well. So I argue that there are really three things that differentiate a company in the world of AI. One is data, because it's data that makes the AI smart. And marketing, big holding companies, marketing companies have a lot of data that is walled garden, that's proprietary. The second is an AI talent. I know most people have rebranded themselves as AI experts over the past 3 years, but the reality is that if you want to build differentiated AI solutions, you need to have differentiated AI talent. And we're very lucky that Cetalia was acquired by WPP. I think WPP's lucky that they acquired Cetalia, but we have 300 deep experts that are trying to push the boundaries. And finally, it's leadership. So going back to what we talked about earlier, if leadership are being kind of not placed in the right bets, if they don't understand about the transformational power of these technologies, if they're getting seduced by the hype, then they make the wrong decisions. And now is not the right time to be making wrong decisions.
Great, love it. So leadership, on board, educated, with a differentiated strategy, people, AI talent, and proprietary data. That's super. So on the leadership point, what's a misconception that business leaders have about AI that you wish you could magically sort out?
Well, I do a lot of talks trying to get business leaders to understand that there are different types of algorithms out there, and AI is not just generative AI, and it's not a panacea to solve all problems across your organization. And so giving them a framework to identify frictions and then apply the right technologies is I think it's something that's been a very sort of powerful tool that we've developed. So yeah, it's just really going back to this idea of not getting seduced by the latest and greatest technologies, and making sure that you're placing the right bets for the right technologies.
So if you have that conversation around like not being seduced by the hype, how do you have the conversation around managing expectations? It's like, what can you get with AI? What can you not get? And, when you implement, and I know safety is an important topic that is close to your heart. So how do you manage all of that? It's like, hey, what's the RI? Wait a minute,
AI is just software. It's phenomenally powerful software because it can, massively overachieve the goal that you've given it. But just like software, you need to make sure that you're testing it, you're putting the right guardrails, you're investing not just in the build of it, but the maintenance, the support, innovating it. So I think that is something that you need to remember. If you want to build your own AI solutions, there's 90% of stuff that often is missed, that goes beyond just building it.
Maybe a quick fire round of questions. So I've got a few short questions to ask.
Sure.
What's a contrarian view you have in the industry? I think we've talked about a couple, but if there's like one that today you think hard about.
Contrarian view would be, according to the definition of goal-directed adaptive systems, that nobody's doing AI, which is a ridiculous comment to make, but ultimately the true paradigm of AI systems that can safely adapt themselves in production. And I think that's coming, by the way.
Cool. And how do you stay up to date as a leader? The world is moving so fast. What's your way to stay up to date with everything happening?
Well, it's sort of my job to try and not get surprised by the future, although that is becoming more and more difficult. But I have a prediction that the AI will develop in this way that I've mentioned about, kind of like a PhD and postdoc and professor. And I think about what are the implications of a world where these models are more and more capable. I'm also interested in new emerging technologies from academia called neuromorphics, which are models much on how our brains work. So the sort of hypothesis or idea is that the cost, the energy cost, the data required to train models is going to become exponentially less. And so I don't necessarily need to stay on top of all of the academic developments. I just have to make sure that I'm sampling enough to make sure that it's validating my predictions.
Great. Next is, and I hope I know the answer to this one. What's your favorite programming language?
Well, I've got a soft spot for Java because I learned that originally in my undergraduate. But even MATLAB is a great tool to hack about with. I expect most people nowadays will say Python, but I don't know. I like Java because that was where I learned about object-oriented programming. And when you learn about object-oriented programming, it's a way of thinking about systems and the interactions of systems. So you need to be a systemic thinker to be able to build objectively object-oriented programs.
That's crazy because I agree with you. I wrote a book called Modern Java in Action. It teaches object-oriented programming, but also functional programming. I guess you probably like it because agents model as object and message passing is modeled through method calls.
Exactly.
So that's probably
Yeah.
where it's come from. I was not expecting that. Then I thought you'd say Python.
What do you think I was going to say?
Python,
Yeah.
but Java is also my language, so that's great.
And the nice thing about Java is there's abstraction layers and all this kind of stuff. So it's for me, it's a way of modeling actually the real world.
Yeah, it's statically typed, so you're not getting code of code. What was your favorite subject at school?
Oh, crikey. I was terrible at school. I still am pretty bad at school. Yeah, I'm going to answer the wrong question here, but which is that it was philosophy. So I actually learned philosophy outside of school. That was a thing that I was drawn to beyond my studies. That said, logic and reasoning and all that kind of stuff is fun. But I guess that also links to philosophy as well.
Yeah, those are tightly coupled subject, philosophy and logic. Amazing. And final one, what's your favorite music genre?
And you know what? I was brought up by my grandparents in a small working class town in the corner of England, and many, many years ago. And all they used to do is play like 60s music and I don't know, also like musicals like Andrew Lloyd Webber. So I actually have a soft spot for that genre, unfortunately. But I came into music late, so I'm still catching up.
Thank you, Daniel. It's been great chatting to you today.
Nice one. Thanks.
Fantastic conversation with Daniel, super charismatic, really enjoyed it. There's a couple of cool takeaways. The first one is clearly lots of hype in AI. Recommendation here is focus on frictions in your business. Literally make a list of all the frictions across all your business functions, supply chain, marketing, and so on, and start tackling them, one by one with a prioritization framework. So forget the talk, start working, and get on with it. And starting with frictions is the way to go. The second really good insight was around the question of how do you create defensibility in this world of AI. There's three factors. You need proprietary data. That data is yours. Those are your insights. You can utilize that to compete. 2, you need AI talent. People that can identify opportunities and build the systems that are going to deliver that competitive advantage. And finally, your leadership team needs to be on board and educated and recognize the opportunities and be willing to fund them. And if you got those three factors, you can create defensibility in your organization in this world that is, moving really fast. So thank you, everybody, and see you on the next episode. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Data and AI Mastery. If you found value in today's discussion, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an insight from the leaders driving the future of data and AI. And if you're a data and AI leader looking to upskill your workforce with the fundamental data and AI skills to transform your business, Cambridge Spark is here to guide you every step of the way. Be sure to reach out to us on LinkedIn or on our website, cambridgespark.com. Until then, be sure to keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with data, and remember, mastery comes with continued learning and action. Until next time, stay ahead, stay inspired, and stay masterful.